All right, so today we are doing home lesson 3.2. As I already said, Google Classroom under week, what week are we on? 23. Yeah, 23. Remember, as I just reviewed, we're going over the investigation question, why do different substances have different properties? So far, we've investigated that with the sim. Right now, this is not going to be the whole period, so you have a few minutes here. You're going to reread a section of the Atomic Zoom-In article in order to gather more evidence. The evidence is going to help you to answer the investigation question. I want you to only reread the section called How Atoms Make Your Orange Juice Smell Good and Your Socks Smell Bad. Be sure to pay attention to the text, the diagram, and the caption. So go ahead and go to Google Classroom and open up number 2 for today. Or I think you can even click this link. You sure can. So either or. So once you get to Google Classroom, this is what you should see. I meant Amplify, not Google Classroom. And students are going to reread a section of Atomic Zoom-In and answer the investigation question. They then discuss the repeating nature of atom groups. So the question that we are trying to answer, why do different substances have different properties? Reread the passage, How Atoms Make Your Orange Juice Smell Good and Your Socks Smell Bad, in the Atomic Zoom-In article. Also review the diagrams associated with this text, gathering evidence about the investigation question. Then use the evidence you gathered from the excerpt and diagrams to answer the question below. So you should have already annotated this article, okay? You should have highlighted and made notes. So if your article is not highlighted and annotated, you want to do that tonight for homework because it will be graded. Right now, you're going to scroll down to this section, How Atoms Make Your Orange Juice Smell Good and Your Socks Smell Bad. And you're going to read until you get to Are Diamonds Real? So you want to stop there. So it's not a lot. You're going to read, highlight, annotate, and your annotations and highlighting should focus on the question, which is below it. How do the types and number of atoms that repeat to make up a substance affect its properties? I'm going to stop talking so that you can read, and then we're going to come back together when everybody is finished. All right, so you should have answered the question down here at the bottom. How do the types and numbers of atoms that repeat to make up a substance affect its properties? You want to click Save and Continue, and then hand in. You can also mark that as done in Google Classroom. All right, so if you remember back to the video that we watched, we saw in the video that everything is made of atoms. Atoms and the groups they form are what give each substance its unique set of properties. It's that very basic level that determines the properties of a substance. Different properties or different substances have different properties because they're made up of different repeating groups of atoms. For example, oil and water have different properties because the groups of atoms that make up each substance differ in the type and the number. We're going to take a look at a diagram that shows the different ways that atoms and groups of atoms repeat to make up a substance. It's very overwhelming at first, and I'm going to kind of walk you through it. So we have two diagrams here. We have the extended structures, and then we have molecules over here, okay? I'm going to start with the extended structures up here in the upper left corner. So some substances, such as gold, are made of the same atoms that repeat. So if you see here, gold is just AU, stands for gold, that's its symbol. It's just the gold atom repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated, okay? Whereas other substances are groups of atoms. So salt is always made up of a sodium and a chloride. bonded together. So in sodium chloride or salt, it's that NaCl repeated over and over and over and over again, where sodium always bonds to a chlorine. And sodium here is bonding to a chlorine. That's why it's not sodium down the first row or column and chlorine down the second column, because the sodium always has to bond to the chlorine. Okay, so that's why it's alternated like that. And then water is always made up of H2O, right? 2 H's, 1 O. And that's just repeated over and over and over and over. The more H2O molecules you have, the more water you have. So it doesn't matter whether you have 1 H2O or 10 H2Os, it's still water, it still has the same properties. When some substances are in the solid phase, I'm down here in the lower left, many atoms or repeating groups of atoms connect to form extended structures. Okay, so we're connecting to create those structures. And we say solid because remember, solid is when those molecules have the least freedom of movement, they're the closest together. And then in some substances, such as water and cellulose, these repeating groups of atoms form individual molecules, each of which is a separate group of atoms. These are models of the substances that you investigated in the sim. They all represent molecules. So we have in that first row, we have different substances. So sample 1 and sample 2 were different. They're made up of different arrangement of that oxygen and carbon. The same substances were sample 2 and sample 3 because it's the same arrangement, carbon, oxygen, but it's just more of them. And I talked about that when we did our little review. Sample 1 is different, is carbon dioxide, is a different substance and has different properties than sample 2 because they're made up of a different repeating atom groups. Whereas 2 and 3 are the same because it's made up of the same group that repeats. The types and numbers of atoms in the repeating group determines the identity of the substance. So whatever it's made up of and however many there are, and its properties. However, the number of repeating groups, so the number of the COs that there are here, determines only the amount. So this means it's going to look different. This means you're just going to have more of it. A lot of repeat. I'm hoping you get that now. So last question, and then we are done. We'll play a game. Why do different substances have different properties? Unfortunately, you can't go back to your 7 slides. But I will put up a slide to help you. That slide will help you. Oh, now it goes all the way back. Oh, guys, I'm losing my mind, right? Why did anyone say, hey, I can't type? So
I'm trying to say the first time. We'll just...
Okay, go ahead. If you know what to type, go for it. If not, I'm going to find something to help you. Sometimes I forget how that Nearpod works. Here we go. That'll help you.
Once you finish that question, you can mark your near product down as well.
Remember, if you're missing assignments to get done, let's get them done before I see you next on Thursday. And that is the end of this lesson.